I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the tragic death of a house cleaner, shot through a door at a home she thought she was supposed to be cleaning. Here's the story. Maria Perez de Velasquez arrived at a home in Whitestown, Indiana just before sunrise. She was there with her husband. They have a cleaning business and were getting ready to enter the home with a set of keys so they could do their job. But there was one big problem. They were at the wrong house. What happened next was tragic and fatal. Standing by the front door, a deafening shot tore through that door and struck Maria in the head. Her husband watched the horror unfold, unable to save her. Now the DA must decide whether or not to charge the homeowner or rule this shooting as a justifiable homicide under Indiana law. A lot of people are talking about this story and talking about the facts surrounding the story, and you put these things together. I mean, you've got this woman and her husband have this business, and they're up early in the morning going to work, and they've got to clean a house, and they go to this address. Maybe someone gave them the wrong address. They got confused. I don't know, but it was the wrong house. It's before the sun is rising. But they're just there to clean. And could you imagine being there with your wife, the mother of your children, and you see her get shot in the head? And I think everyone's wondering, like, how and why did all of this happen? Let's bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas, who's been looking into the story for us. I think we need to start at the scene here, right? Where this happens, because we know where it happens. It's right in front of the house. What do we know about the scene of the shooting here?
Yeah, Vinny, happened right in front of the house. They say they triple-checked the address before they even approached the home. They just showed up to clean. This all happened before 7 a.m., and her husband says he didn't even realize that she had been shot until she fell into his arms, bloody, after being hit in the head when that bullet came through that door. So, Vinny, let's take our viewers to that scene of what we have here. Let's start with the house itself. Let's just look at a big scope of the house. You see it there. This is where the shooting happened. Now we zoom in, Vinny, on the front porch. Let's take us in closer here so we can see the front porch, the front door. You see it there. You see the mailbox in the front, the garage off to the right. But Vinny, let's go even further. We circled the little side window to the left of the front door there. Now this side window, presumably for, if somebody knocks on your door, you can have easy access to look out and see who it is, whether that's a delivery driver, a family member coming over, or, ironically, somebody coming to clean the house. Now, Vinny, let's zoom in even further to the door itself. You see the doorknob there to the left of the screen, and right above it, that looks like a keypad and the manual keyhole right under it. Now, we're not saying that this is the exact brand, but there on the right, that is a Quickset Halo keypad smart lock. This is how the homeowner gets into the door. So you have the digitized code that you have designated to the home that you can type in, and also the manual old-fashioned key that you can put into the keyhole right below it. Now let's come back out a little bit, Vinny, to the driveway. See the driveway there in front of the garage? There's only one of two places that they could have parked. Obviously, there's no cars there now at the crime scene, but they could have parked here in the driveway. They could have parked out on the street where somebody could have looked out of the window and seen a car sitting there and just known somebody's knocking on the door. We don't know who it is, but maybe we can just stop and see who it is. And Vinny, of course, lastly, we have the picture of the bullet hole through that door where the fatal shot came and hit Maria de Velasquez in the head, eventually killing her right there on that front doorstep. And Vinny, as we walk through this whole crime scene, the question I'm still left with is, why was that cleaning scheduled so early before 7 a.m.? It's very bizarre.
Yeah. And my guess would be, if it's an early cleaning like that, it may be a house that is vacant where the owners aren't there. And that would make some sense, because if you were there, you wouldn't want your cleaners coming over at, 6:30, 6:45 in the morning. I think most people wouldn't want that. Thanks, Cody. Cody's going to stick around. A lot more information for us tonight. So let's start at the scene. And that brings us to the first question in our investigation, which is, what does the shooting scene tell us, right? What does it tell us about what happened, whether it's the mindset of the shooter or the mindset of the victim that early morning? Here to help answer that question is retired criminal defense attorney, professor of criminal justice, Natasha Robinson, and former homicide detective Chris McDonough. He's also the host of The Interview Room with Chris McDonough. Great to have you both here. Chris, I'll begin with you. As an investigator looking at that scene, that door, what are some of the questions you have about the actions of the shooter from inside based upon what we've seen in terms of the window, in terms of the lock, the bullet hole, etc.?
Yeah, and Vinny, thank you. Those are great observations, first of all, by Cody. And so the biggest question that comes to my mind almost immediately is what's the position of the shooter? What's their line of sight? Can they see through that, side window? Are they just, randomly behind that door hearing what they think is somebody coming in terms of, maybe a burglar or something like that? That will give us a better understanding, and they can figure that out immediately through a laser trajectory recreation.
Yeah, and the other part of this, Natasha, is that there's two of them there that are in front of the house. Her husband is next to her, and she's the one that gets shot, but there's two people on the front, one person, we believe, on the other side of that door. What does that scene tell you about what happened that morning, and what questions do you have?
Oh, well, first, thanks for having me here. I completely agree with the observations that have been made by Cody and my colleague Chris. It seems to me that the questions that I have include what was the lighting at that time. When I was looking at the zoom in, I was trying to see if there were any floodlights, any type of automatic lighting that would let us know what the homeowner saw and what Ms. Perez saw. In addition, looking to see how she gained or was trying to gain entry. Was there something that she touched, maybe that indicated maybe the homeowner heard something, or she had the access code? Whatever it was, these are just a few of the questions that I have about what happened, because this shooting occurred right at dawn, if you will, right before 7 a.m., so early in the morning.
Chris, what we did notice and what we didn't find, and we thought we would see perhaps, would be some sort of a ring type doorbell, one of the video doorbells. From our vantage point of the shots that we had, we didn't see one. To me, that would be huge if one did exist, because I'm wondering if he's able to see these two people in front getting ready to clean a home. And again, I don't know the answer here, but my guess would be they would have some cleaning equipment with them. And I'm trying to understand, if someone sees these people in front, this couple, how you could mistake them for home invaders versus the cleaning crew.
Yeah, that's a great point, Vinny. I mean, and also to dovetail into that, then you have to ask yourself, the homeowner, did they have any type of communication or attempt to communicate with the people at the front door, to figure out, why you're here at 6:45 in the morning? And that's why I think the trajectory on this situation is going to be really important. Let's say there's a stairwell inside, and I don't know the layout of the house. That's why I'm bringing this point up. If they're up on a landing, let's say, and shooting through the front door, we may have a problem here. But if they're at the front door, or at least getting towards it, and they believe there's an imminent threat, that may change the scenario a little.
Yeah, Natasha, and I'm wondering, the other thing I noticed about the house, if in fact Maria and her husband thought they were going to clean a vacant home, I don't know if there's anything they would see that would tell them that there's somebody inside, right? But they did. They must not have knocked on the door or rang the doorbell. I mean, from what I've gathered from his interview, he is, or she is, looking for the key. They're both looking for the key to the house, because they have one of those big rings that has a bunch of keys on it. So they had a key that was supposed to open the house that they were supposed to clean. But there's nothing that screams out to me from this crime scene photo of the home that it looks like it would be occupied. Because if the owner has a car, it's in the garage, it's out of sight.
You're right, and that would greatly depend upon the communication that was given to them before they arrived. The husband has shared in previous interviews that he checked, double-checked, triple-checked the address to make sure they were at the right location. So it would really depend upon what was their mindset when they walked into the house. What was communicated to them before they arrived? Was the house supposed to be vacant? And what was it about that location that they believed, in fact, they were at the rat house to begin with?
Yeah, and it tells me if they're checking 3 or 4 times for the address, Chris, it's a place they've never been before.
Yeah, absolutely. And so those are the questions that the investigators have to answer, very carefully, because, that also gives us an insight into what they were doing. And then that will be able to project itself into the insight of what the individual who pulled the trigger was thinking.
All right, our guests are staying with us. Coming up next, will the resident be charged?
And your ground law is going to be a primary defense in this case.
Mama tried. Now my daddy's crying because I'm in here.
You are the common denominator that led to JD and Big Doug shooting each other in the dark of night.
All right, help party, I'm dying.
Don't you have the blood of both these men on your hands?
I felt guilty for that.
You felt guilty because, frankly, you were guilty.
Interview with a Killer. New episode Saturday night at 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
Our family, we don't speak too much English, but we try to. And they say for everybody for coming, thank you for coming. Family say they are not alone. You guys with us.
Yeah, this is a story of a devastated family, losing mom. Let's bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Cody, let's talk about the investigation now, right?
Yeah.
Investigators, the DA, they all kind of work together here to figure out what this actually is and what it means legally. So what is the latest tonight?
Yeah, Vinny, well, that shooter, who is still unidentified, could still face charges in this case pending an ongoing investigation, an ongoing review done by the prosecutor's office up in Indiana. Now, we had expected to have already heard the result of this review, but we got notice that the DA had a family emergency, so the announcement about whether charges will be filed has been pushed back a few days. But Vinny, the DA's decision will be based upon a specific stand your ground law in Indiana. Take a listen to the victim's family attorney speaking about this.
And your ground law is going to be a primary defense in this case, regardless of whether he decides to pursue charges or not. We are conducting an independent investigation into the events that led into her death, and we will work closely with law enforcement and community leaders to ensure that her family's voice is heard.
So, Vinny, we've heard about stand your ground laws for years, especially here at Court TV. Laws pretty much allowing for a wider range for use of deadly force if someone feels reasonably they have a fear of death or danger. But Indiana has this law called the Castle Doctrine, which pretty much is the same thing, just applied to your house. What self-defense rights you have when somebody is breaking into your house. Now, this Castle Doctrine in Indiana says, for the use of force, especially deadly force, to be justified under Indiana's Castle Doctrine and self-defense laws, the individual's belief in the necessity of that force to prevent serious harm or a forcible felony must be both genuinely held, subjective, and something a, quote, reasonable person would have believed in the same situation, objective. Now, Vinny, another development in this story here, the owners of the home where this took place have hired one of Indiana's most prominent constitutional lawyers who specializes specifically in the Second Amendment, a guy by the name of Guy Relford. Now, authorities have not confirmed whether the shooter is in fact the homeowner, but the homeowners nonetheless have lawyered up.
Fascinating, and you know, there's two levels of, there's going to be a civil case, we know that, but it's on the criminal side that there are some questions, and that brings us to our next question. Will the resident be charged? The man who fired the gun that killed Maria Perez, will he be charged? Still here to help with our investigation, retired criminal defense attorney Natasha Robinson, and also joining us, criminal defense attorney, civil attorney Brian Watkins. All right, Brian, been a while, great to see you. I'll let you start things off here. What are your thoughts here with the Castle Doctrine, with all of what's going on in Indiana? Do you think that this DA, in evaluating what happened on the front steps or the front porch of that home, is going to charge the shooter here?
It all depends on what the shooter said was going through his mind at the time, what he perceived, and why he thought what he did think.
Well, let me put this in the mix. Let me put this in the mix, Brian, because he did make a call to 911 and say someone's trying to break into my house. So that gives you a sneak peek of what's on his mind, perhaps.
Yes, but now the question is going to be what made him think that? Were there serious banging on the doors? Was someone kicking the door? Was someone trying to manipulate the lock? You know, was someone looking in the windows? What would make you think that someone's breaking in your house? People approach your house, salesmen come to your house all the time. People get the wrong house. Amazon deliverers are at people's doors all day, every day. What makes you think these people were trying to break in? Someone coming to your door unannounced and uninvited is not enough.
Let me ask you, Natasha Robinson, what are your thoughts here? Do you think he's going to be charged?
Yes, I do think so. I think so because of the fact that for many of the cases that I've done, prosecutors, they bring charges not only that they think are relatable, but they bring charges that they think they can prove and ultimately that they can win. And so I know that in Indiana, there is this provision called license to knock, which allows persons to approach houses that they may be delivering or selling cookies or anything like that without there being the fear of any type of violence or retaliation. And so having said that, this prosecutor has a decision of determining whether it's going to be a charge of murder, whether it's going to be a charge of involuntary manslaughter, or no charges at all. And because there is the death of Ms. Perez, I do believe that charges are going to be pending.
Brian, let me throw a couple more facts into it. Is it a problem for prosecutors that the victim in this case and her husband, and again, I don't know if they did or didn't, but if they didn't knock on the door, if they didn't ring the doorbell, if they were attempting to open the door with a key, is that a problem for prosecutors? If someone is fumbling around with your key and not ringing the doorbell and not knocking on the door to announce that they are here to clean the home?
Absolutely. You know, that goes into what formed the belief of the shooter, that why he thought his house was being broken into. So that is going to be huge. It's all going to basically come down to what he told the police at the scene, why he did what he did. What was he perceiving at the time? And you know, not knocking, not announcing yourself. I mean, a lot of people, even when you have a key, you say, you know, hello, I'm here. You know, you don't want to catch somebody while they're changing clothes or something like that. It's just a courtesy. So if they did not do that, that goes to support his belief that someone was actually breaking in. Only people who don't announce themselves are, in fact, burglars.
Natasha, does anything about who the individual is on the inside matter? If it's someone who's elderly, if it's someone who maybe has been a victim of a crime before, would any of that come into the mix, do you think, for a DA in making a decision here?
I do think so, because that speaks to the heightened level of perception as it relates to the perspective of the homeowner. Maybe there have been prior incidences that would raise their sensitivity levels. However, what is the challenge is the prosecutor must prove or rather, let me say it this way, that the defense must talk about the subjectivity of the homeowner as well as what a reasonable person would do in that situation. And so it must be both. And while I think the defense may be proficient in being able to talk about what the homeowner thought, the second prong, which is what would a reasonable person believe under those circumstances, is what is the challenge. And the facts have to continue to come to bear to understand what is relevant in that second part of the case.
Natasha Robinson, so glad you are a professor teaching the next round of professionals in the criminal justice system. Awesome job. Thank you so much. Brian Watkins is going to stick around. Still to come, why has this case touched a nerve with the community? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the death of a house cleaner shot in the head, standing in front of a house she thought she was supposed to clean. The shooter was inside and fired through the front door. Here's the story. Maria Perez de Velasquez arrived just before sunrise in Whitestown, Indiana, alongside her husband, ready to start another day with their cleaning business. Keys in hand, they approached the home they believed was their client's. But a terrible mistake had been made. They were at the wrong house. Moments later, a single gunshot erupted from behind the front door, striking Maria in the head. Her husband screamed, powerless, as the horror unfolded before him. Now investigators and the district attorney are weighing the facts, examining Indiana's castle doctrine laws, and deciding whether the homeowner's claim of self-defense justifies this fatal tragedy. A life ended, a family shattered, and a community left searching for answers. That morning, the victim was doing nothing wrong, went to the wrong house, but no criminal intent whatsoever. And then you go inside the home. That person, according to what they said, didn't wake up early that morning planning on shooting and killing someone. These kind of stories break my heart, but they are important cases because these are important decisions that prosecutors have to make, and then sometimes juries have to ultimately make these calls. And it's the kind of story that everyone is talking about. Let's check back in with Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. And let's talk about that, the reaction to this shooting. What has the reaction been here?
Well, Vinny, the community is kind of in this emotional uproar, and, you know, rightfully so, with this woman dying in such a tragic way. And people in the community have held a vigil. You know, family members spoke, people shared memories of Maria and talked about how sad her death is, how it affected everyone around. Let's listen to some of their chants. Some people showed up there, and Maria's from Guatemala, so some of their chants are in Spanish. And here in these chants, they're saying, without justice, there is no peace, and together united, justice for Maria. Let's take a listen.
Sin justicia, no hay paz. 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 Juntos, unidos, justicia por María. Juntos, unidos, justicia por María.
And Vinny, family members, as I said, they also spoke. It was also in Spanish, but we have translated it for our viewers. Let's take a listen to some of that.
Somos tres hermanas.
We are three sisters, daughters of my father. In truth, we loved her like a mother. I see my younger sisters suffering. They are not to blame for anything they are living through, suffering through. I see the baby suffering. He is not to blame. We came to this country to better ourselves, not to harm anyone. We only came to achieve something. It is very painful for me because we came with her, with many dreams. We talked on the way, suffering on the way to this country. We had many dreams we wanted to fulfill in Guatemala. We did not expect this news, and it is very painful to see my father suffering. I was saying that he is the only one we have left now. Seeing him suffer, Us seeing him suffer is very painful. We are many daughters, and seeing him suffer for his wife, who loved him very much. She loved him so much. When they were together, they were very happy. We went to church, they went to church, they would invite us to church. Sometimes we would go with everyone, with all his daughters. Maria was there, in front of us. She taught us to look for the things of God. In Guatemala, in our country, we went to vigils, fast. We were always with her, like a mother, someone who taught us the right path. And that is why we are here, to present ourselves, to ask for justice. Because it is not possible that she, having been here for only 2 years, had this happen. And that is why we are here, asking for justice.
And Vinnie, members of the community also put on a demonstration as well. They held a rally for justice for Maria, talking about the need for the shooter to be punished. Take a look at this.
¿Cuándo? ¿Cuándo?
Together we stand.
So again, Vinnie, just a tragedy all around. I mean, her husband was there with her. He says he didn't even realize she was shot until she fell into his arms. He didn't even think that the key was in the keyhole before the bullet even came through that door. And we know she died right there on that doorstep. And another little tidbit, Vinnie, her family wants her body moved back down to Guatemala so they can have a proper burial service for her down there in her home country.
All right, thanks so much, Cody. Yeah, and you look on social media and you go to the community where this happened, everyone is reacting to this, and that brings us to the next question in our investigation. Why has this case touched a nerve with the community? Let's bring in our guests who are going to help us answer that question. Nicole Armetta, who created a GoFundMe fundraiser for Maria's family, which at last check has raised more than $126,000. Wow. Also with us, Megan Tomlinson. She created a website and a petition demanding justice for Maria. Thank you both for being here. And Nicole, I'll begin with you. Why did this case touch such a nerve with you?
I mean, Whitestown, Indiana is not a crime-ridden area. We have random things that happen, but not this extent. And so when I heard about it in the morning at the bus stop, I was looking on Facebook to reach out to the family just to see if we could do anything for them. They didn't seem at that time to know how to do a GoFundMe, so they gave me permission to set it up. We set it for a $20,000 goal. I never thought we would be where we are today with 2 of them and that amount of money. But I also never thought we would be here today without any charges either. So yeah, I wanted to help in some way, and that was how it started.
Now, that's a lot of money that's been raised. Have you gotten any feedback from the people who are making these donations? Are they leaving comments? Are they saying anything?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody is just like, this is a tragedy and something needs to happen. I mean, you have your people that say it was justified and there's that castle doctrine law, and I get it, but this does not seem like that fits the bill. And if it does, then the law needs to be changed, to be honest.
Megan, from your perspective, why did this touch you as well?
So for me, I own a cleaning business, so it's like that could have been me, but also because my own mother was murdered last year in Indiana, about an hour away from where this happened at, and there was no justice for her either. It took 7 months, but I advocated for her every day. I did a lot of research, and I worked really hard to make sure that she got justice, and her husband was arrested in May of this year and charged with her murder. So, you know, I started a nonprofit which helps families in this exact situation, because it's like, I was able to help my mom, thankfully, but not everybody else knows how to or even where to start at. So whenever I saw this happen, it was like, it really hit home for me with both things. So I reached out to them and just tried to help in any way that I could.
So, Megan, you said you reached out to the family. Having been through it the way you were through it, you had that perspective. How important was that in being able to reach out to them and attempt to I guess, comfort them and give them some guidance through all of this?
I would say it's really important, you know, on top of working with the family, it's also, I've been trying to work with the other organizations that are trying to work with them, as well as the community, because as much as everyone has really great ideas and everything, like you said, it is a very big perspective difference. And until you've really been in those shoes, it's hard to say, you know, exactly what would be best. And so I feel like I can go in there and really say, like, hey guys, you know, what about this instead? Or, you know, I can explain to them the difference between a criminal attorney and a civil attorney and what I think they should do instead, and, you know, all of those things.
Absolutely, that's so important. Because at the moment this is happening, you're also dealing with this incredible grief and loss, and then all these other things are happening at the same time. You know, I worked at the prosecutor's office, and we had advocates that would work with families, but sometimes there's some places that don't. It depends on what state the case is in, et cetera. Nicole, what are your thoughts here about this family? Do you think that they're going to be able to, I'm not going to say overcome, but the word is kind of like survive the moment right now, between the emotion, trying to get Maria back to Guatemala, dealing with the children, explaining to them. What are your thoughts there about how the family will be able to deal with what's happening right here, right now?
I mean, I think right now you're never going to be able to replace a mother, sister, wife, and especially not with money. And I think it's going to be a long journey ahead for them. I think finding some semblance of justice is like so important, because that will give them hope that at least something came of it. I think the biggest issue is going to be if there is no charges brought, because then it makes it look like, number one, anyone can do that at any time and get away with it. And number two, that her life didn't matter enough, that somebody should be held accountable for it because of a law. Yeah. I think it's going to be a really hard journey. I don't think it's something they're going to get through quickly. And I think they have a great family, a great community surrounding them. And we're all doing everything we can as well to make sure that we're here for them and support them for the long run, not just for the moment.
Megan, how important is that, what Nicole mentioned there, which is, again, and for you, you said 7 months, and there was, I guess, an obvious suspect here. We know who shot the gun. We know who shot the gun. We don't know his name, but like everyone knows, the investigators know it's not a whodunit here. How important do you think it is, from your perspective, having been in those shoes, to hear the words that someone has been charged?
It's very important. You know, I think you can't just kill someone and just continue to go on like nothing happened. I don't think that's right. I don't think that anyone thinks that that's right in any circumstance. So I do think a lot of it is going to be about justice, but also about memorializing her and, you know, ensuring that, so kind of like my mom, I wanted to make sure that her death was not just a statistic. I wanted to make sure that it meant more than that, than just a number, a homicide number, domestic violence number. You know, I want to ensure that her name goes on to save other lives. So they could do that with Maria and, you know, do a scholarship fund each year, you know, fundraisers, et cetera. They could do a lot of different things, get a garden named after her, you know, just there's so many different ideas that they could do as well, so that she lives on.
That is incredibly important. Nicole, I know we lost your video, but I know you can still hear us. What about the immediate neighborhood? How are the folks in the neighborhood reacting to this? The only thing I kind of know about that neighborhood, just from looking at it, seems like it's relatively new, a relatively new development. What have folks in town there said, and how have they reacted to this?
Well, I mean, Whitestown is a growing community, so there's a lot of new neighborhoods, new builds, and it's forever growing. So a lot of people, their concern is that they originally, still don't know who the shooter was or who named somebody, even though we realized without charges being filed, you can't do that. But it makes the community feel like how do we know they're not going to do it again? If they're not in custody, do they have more guns? If they don't get charges filed, can they still own guns? I'm assuming probably. So I think there's an uneasy feeling just kind of not knowing what's going to happen.
Nicole Armenta, Megan Tomlinson, thank you both for joining us. And it's great to know that the community out there in Indiana has folks like you. We appreciate it. Coming up next, when should a homeowner use deadly force?
Mama tried. Now my daddy's crying because I'm in here.
You are the common denominator that led to JD and Big Doug shooting each other in the dark of night.
All right, help party, I'm dying.
Don't you have the blood of both these men on your hands?
I feel guilty for that.
You felt guilty because, frankly, you were guilty.
Interview with a Killer. New episode Saturday night at 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
He says that even if we are immigrants, we are still people. We are not animals, we are still human, and that we deserve this justice to be delivered.
Family looking for justice. A decision has not been made yet by the DA. We expect that within days. It should happen. Let's check back in with Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. You know, when we first started talking about this story and talking about this case, and we looked at the fact pattern, it's like, this isn't the first time at Court TV that we've seen a case like this.
That's absolutely right, Vinny. We've seen it play out twice in recent years, both of which, as you said, have played out right here on the network here at Court TV. Now, Vinny, the more timely one to talk about with the release of the new Netflix documentary, The Perfect Neighbor, is the story of Susan Lawrence, who shot and killed her neighbor, A.J. Owens, in Florida. Now, this one's a little different than Maria's case here, given there was an altercation beforehand, but essentially, Lawrence got into an argument with Owens' kids. Owens went over to confront Lawrence, and Lawrence shot her through her locked front door, Vinny. Now, the next story is one out of Missouri involving teenager Ralph Yarl, the teen who was going to pick up his brother, but accidentally rang the wrong doorbell to the wrong home, and that is when Andrew Lester fired multiple shots through his front door, hitting Yarl in the head and in the arm. But thankfully, the teenager survived that shooting. But Vinny, the common denominator here is that both of these cases ended in convictions.
Yeah. You know, you're shooting through the door, you're claiming that you're trying to protect your home, and in the end, they're convicted. Cody Thomas, thanks so much. That brings us to the next question in our investigation, right? Because we hear about castle doctrine, we hear about stand your ground, but when should a homeowner use deadly force? The two cases Cody talked about, no, you're not supposed to use deadly force there. Your neighbor is banging on your door. The door's still locked, no. So when exactly should a homeowner? Here to help answer that question, criminal defense attorney, civil attorney Brian Watkins is still with us, former homicide detective Chris McDonough, who's also the host of the Interview Room with Chris McDonough. Brian, I'll start with you. There are appropriate times, from your perspective, in your mindset, when should a homeowner use deadly force? You know, they've got a gun, they've got it to protect themselves. At what point? What are the factors you think that need to come into play for the appropriate use of self-defense, justifiable homicide by someone in their home?
You know, I think the statutes address that very question, and they put the word in there, imminent harm, which means it's about to happen if you don't use deadly force. It can't be some threat of some future harm. Oh, this guy said he was going to kick my butt. Let me go out and shoot him right now before he gets a chance to. We can't live in a society like that. It has to be imminent harm. When you're behind a locked door, that's not imminent harm. Now, if the door gets kicked in and now the door is open, well, that's a different story. But there's no imminent harm when a person has not breached your home. And so that word imminent, I think, is huge. And that's what everything has to be, hinges on. What was the imminent harm? What's going to happen if you don't do this? That's the question.
Chris McDonough, what are your thoughts here on when it's appropriate for someone in their home to use deadly force?
Well, I agree with everything that was just said, that imminent, serious bodily injury thought process, it also has to be supported almost immediately by the crime scene. What I mean by that, when we talk about immediacy, is this attacker armed? Are they advancing? Are they kicking in the door, the side windows, et cetera, like we see on this house? That would cause somebody to think, okay, there's this violence, it's happening immediately, and it would be reasonable at that point to protect yourself. And I think that's what the law would be saying in this circumstance.
All right, Brian, I'm going to hit you with like a law school exam question here. Here we go. And this is a scenario that is very possible in a home invasion scenario. If, in fact, there's 3 individuals outside of your home, and it's just you with your one weapon, but 3 armed individuals outside your home, do you think it still comes into play that they have to actually breach the front door? Or is the attempt of a breach, do you think, enough under that scenario if it's 3 armed individuals attempting, but not yet getting inside your home?
I think the key to your example there is those individuals are armed, so they too can shoot through the door. So I think I'd be reasonable in shooting through the door first, and I know that they're breaking in. I know they're not house guests. I know they're not coming to clean my house. These are masked, armed, intruders that are armed. So there's no reason you should ever come to my house with a gun. If you come to my house with a gun, you may get shot before you get there.
Yeah, that's a great point. Chris? The other part of this is just trying to keep yourself safe in your home, right? And we still haven't figured out if there was a Ring camera at this home. But to me, it seems like there's a certain onus, and I think society puts it on the homeowner, that, hey, you've got to do a little bit of investigation about who is on the other side of the door before you start firing your weapon. And it just seems there's different ways to do it. But if you can get a security camera, I mean, to me, that's the right move for everybody if you can afford to do it. You almost can't afford to not do it at this point.
Yeah, absolutely, Vinny. And that's, what Brian was saying there. That's why they have a window on the side of that door. So you can peek out and see, what that, quote, imminent threat may be. If it doesn't, line up with 2 people standing on the porch with cleaning supplies, and maybe there's a language barrier, then, shooting through that door could become very problematic.
Yeah, and these stories are just difficult because it's just you're in a neighborhood. It should be nice. It should be quiet. It should be safe for everyone on both sides of the door. Brian Watkins, Chris McDonough, thank you both so much. Appreciate your time. This case could end early next week if the DA says that this was justified, right? Says it's justified, it's over. Or it could be just the beginning if the home resident is charged. If he's charged, expect years of litigation in this one, including attempts to get the charges dismissed. Now, while this case may seem very clear to some, when you apply that Indiana law, it's not exactly black and white. Our system will be tested by this case, and hopefully in the end, some sense of justice will be delivered. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.